Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Kane, and I'm going to start. I think we have, do we have, I can't see. 78 participants. Okay. I am a program specialist, the Community Services Block Grant and the Division of Community Assistance, and I wanted to welcome you all to the presentation on the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, How to Partner. For a couple, before we get started, I wanted to provide a few housekeeping rules. We have muted everyone upon entry, and we ask that everyone remain muted throughout the webinar. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A pod. We will try to answer all questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to the OCS webinars page. So the purpose of this webinar today is to increase knowledge of and encourage state CSBG grant recipients to engage with workforce partners through the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. We will begin with opening remarks from the Director of DCA, Sharice Johnson. Heather Fleck will follow with an overview of the background and vision of WIOA, information on how WIOA can be incorporated, how does WIOA incorporate CSBG, both through the American Job Center Network as well as WIOA state plans and the process of submitting WIOA state plans. Karen Dunn will follow with an overview of the CSBG and WIOA in Washington State by introducing the Washington State Department of Commerce, the Washington State CSBG, and the role of WIOA in Washington State, followed by a discussion on the future of and current examples of workforce investment. There will be a time at the end for questions, which should be submitted in the Q&A box. So I wanted to introduce everybody. Again, my name is Jessica Kane. I am a program specialist with DCA at the Office of Community Services within the Administration for Children and Families, which administers the Community Services Block Grant. One of my roles in DCA is to serve as the CSBG program specialist assigned to review WIOA state plans and to participate in the WIOA interagency work group. Sharice Johnson is the Director of the Division of Community Assistance at the Office of Community Services, Administration for Children and Families, which administers the Community Services Block Grant. Ms. Johnson's career in human services spans over 30 years in a wide range of roles in leadership positions. All of Ms. Johnson's roles have required her to act as a change leader. Ms. Johnson earned a master's degree in social work from East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. Heather Fleck serves as the Governance Unit Chief in the Division of Adult Services and Governance, Employment and Training Administration, and focuses on the implementation of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. Heather has over 20 years of experience in workforce development and has been with ETA for 12 years. In her current role, Heather works in partnership with multiple federal agencies to support state strategies to expand high-quality work-based learning and provide technical assistance to state leaders to align workforce services for youth and adults, post-secondary education, and economic development policy and strategy. Heather holds a master's degree in public policy from Rutgers University and an undergraduate degree in economics from Grinnell College. Karen Dunn has been employed with the Washington State Department of Commerce for over 29 years. For the past 16 years, Karen has been the Community Services Block Grant and Asset Building Program Manager, administering both federal and state-funded CSBG. Karen and her team place a major emphasis on the strength of collaborative relationships and importance of grantees and associations working together for the success of community action and the people we serve. In addition to managing CSBG, Karen also works with low-income weatherization providers in Washington State to ensure compliance with state and federal prevailing wage and requirements for federal and state-funded projects. Karen spent her early childhood on a family farm in rural Arkansas, then moved to the Los Angeles area and ultimately relocated to her home in Washington State. Prior to her employment with the state of Washington, she has worked as a hydraulics inspector for C-17 military aircraft and was a wildland forest fighter in Southern California for over 10 years. Karen holds an MBA from California State University, Fullerton, and a BS in fire science, or Bachelor's of Science in Fire Science. Karen has a passion for adopting rescue animals with special needs and especially loves to share photos of her 41-pound orange tabby cat, fondly named Speed Bump. With that, I'm going to hand over the presentation now to Sharice Johnson to do some opening remarks.
Thank you, Jessica. Hello to the CSBG Network and the Department of Labor and Washington State. On behalf of the Office of Community Services under the leadership of Dr. Laniqua Howard and Deputy Director Janelle George, we thank you for joining this important discussion. I am so excited about the partnership we have been able to forge with the Department of Labor, and I thank you, Heather, for being a part of this discussion today. And it's always wonderful to have a colleague in the field like Karen Dunn as a state CSBG program manager, helping us to facilitate these questions from the field in which we have real life experiences and can learn about them from someone who's doing the work. The CSBG network is a natural and important partner within the workforce system and has a long history of collaborating with public and private workforce partners to better support the needs of those living in poverty or preventing individuals from entering into situations which make them vulnerable to the impact of poverty. As you see on the screen, the goals of CSBG are to reduce poverty, revitalize communities, and empower low-income individuals and families. And when we think about those three core goals, it's to move people beyond their condition in regards to the impact of poverty or to prevent individuals from even going into poverty. And it's to stimulate and revitalize communities so that people have opportunity to earn livable wages so that they can move beyond the conditions of poverty. And it's really a strong anti-poverty strategy when we think about those three goals. This partnership has become even more important as the pandemic has had a significant impact on our country's workforce. You all have seen that through your work in the field. You've seen that through unemployment rates. You've seen that through conversations I'm sure you've had with colleagues, but we know that families have been impacted in a significant way in regards to the workforce community and the work that you're trying to do to help families. So first of all, we want to thank everyone who's on this call because all of us have been impacted by the pandemic for your work, your commitment to make sure that families have the resources they need to be healthy and to thrive, especially as it relates to the work. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to rapid job loss and economic disruption, disproportionately among low-income earners, young workers, workers with less education, non-white workers, specifically Black, Latino, and Indigenous workers, and women with young children, especially Black and Latino women. While we've seen great progress in the national unemployment rate, and we are watching more businesses, schools, and childcare providers reopening, in many cases, the initial and significant economic disruption has left a residual income and economic instability, putting a strain on households and making the need for livable wages and economic security paramount to the well-being of individuals and families with low income, and also revitalizing communities. This is why the CSBG network is so important in this conversation today. This is where the CSBG network comes in. By intentionally partnering with other workforce partners, we can support the current needs of our communities, and we can improve employment and earning. The CSBG network can play a part in how the workforce system continues to adapt and bolster the ability of low-income individuals and families in finding a pathway out of poverty. Which brings us to our first panel speaker today. This webinar is meant to empower the broader CSBG network with greater knowledge on the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, Combined State Plans, and the strategic planning around American Job Centers. Our goal is for CSBG state grant recipients to be able to share the voice of CSBG during the creation of a more efficient, effective, and comprehensive workforce development system to strengthen the strategic partnerships that already exist with other workforce partners and to continue encouraging linkages between anti-poverty programs through the involvement with the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. Having said all of this, I want to thank again the Department of Labor for joining us in this discussion as we work together on a pathway toward a self-sufficiency and economic stability for all. And I'm going to pass this over to Heather Fleck from the Department of Labor as she shares more with you all regarding the WIOA work and workforce development and the opportunities that exist between CSBG and that community that focuses on workforce development. Heather.
Great, thank you so much, Sharice, and thank you for inviting me to join you today in this important discussion. Some of this information might be known to many of you, and others it might be new. But the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act was enacted in July of 2014. It was signed into law by President Obama, and it replaced its predecessor, the predecessor legislation, which was called the Workforce Investment Act. Its primary purpose is to achieve and maintain an integrated job-driven workforce system that links the talents of the workforce to our nation's businesses and employers to, ultimately improve the quality of life for everyone. And it's locally and it's a locally and business-led network of federal, state, regional, and local agencies and organizations. And these organizations provide a whole range of employment, education, training, and other services and supports to help all job seekers, business customers to hopefully get good jobs and give businesses the type of workforce, skilled workers that they need to really be competitive in the global economy. Through the public workforce system, the Department of Labor, where I work, distributes over $3.5 billion in formula programs to states to operate their workforce programs. And then we have about $750 million worth of competitive grants on an annual basis to serve, for more niche programs serving specific populations. Overall, the program is very decentralized, and it's a lot of the direct service delivery happens locally. So DOL gives money to states then distribute it through what are called local areas in our system. And then those services themselves are delivered through about 2,400 American job centers throughout the country. And just so you have an idea of scale, in program year 2019, which I know is a couple of years old now, there were about over 12 million individuals served by the American job centers. Okay, next slide. So how does this legislation, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and the public workforce system include the CSBG program? Well, for one, the law requires that CSBG be a required partner in the American Job Center network, as well as the legislation provides an option for states when they're doing the required planning for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act programs to include the CSBG program in the strategic planning process. Next slide, please. So I want to go a little bit more deeply into the local level partnership opportunities that WIOA puts in place. So as I mentioned, there are a number of American job centers throughout the country, and these are divided up among what are called local areas, which some don't necessarily line up with political jurisdictions or counties in a state, but sometimes they do. And there are these American job centers that have to be in every single local area. And in those job centers, at least one has to be what's called a comprehensive center. And that's where all the required partners that the WIOA lays out need to be able to have services that are made available in that comprehensive American job center. And these, you know, these may not be called American Job Center in your community. Sometimes the branding is different. Some places call them Career Links or Workforce One or WorkSource or any number of names locally. But under this law, so because CSBG is a required partner in this system, it's there in the one-stop center, comprehensive center, with a whole host of other partners, which are on the next slide. So this is a lot of different programs that can offer services in American Job Center. On the left-hand side, you'll see the list of core programs. Those are the programs that actually the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act directly authorizes and you know, lays out all its requirements. So for the Employment and Training Administration, those programs include programs that help adults, dislocated workers, which are unemployed workers, youth, primarily at-risk youth or youth who are no longer in school, as well as the Wagner-Pfizer Act, which is a system that provides labor market information and career services through the American Job Centers. And then the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act also authorizes the adult education and literacy programs that's administered by the Department of Education, and then the vocational rehabilitation program, which is also administered by the Department of Education. So those partners absolutely have to be in American Job Center, offering services in American Job Center and coordinating. And then in a comprehensive center, you see on the right there, all the other partners that WIOA wants to see in an American Job Center. So that is a number of different partners that offer a whole variety of services that can be, some may be duplicatively available to customers, but the ideal, you know, point here is that programs are leveraging each other to provide the best available services to a common customer. And you see CSBG in there. And generally some of the services that anyone can get, a job seeker can get, would be, you know, looking for a job, assistance with resume, assistance with finding training to help them upskill, accessing other services that they may need just for income supports, supportive services, you know, just a huge number of things that they can get in American Job Center. So one of the things that is expected of these partners, I apologize, go back one slide, is that they have to become a required, or as a part of your required partnership role, you need to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the local workforce board to lay out, you know, what services and CSBG will be providing within this American Job Center, as well as just to get a common understanding of where your program fits within the whole of the American Job Center. Next slide. So the other way in which CSBG can be incorporated, or the other way in which WIOA includes CSBG as a partner, is through state planning. So we just went over more of the local level delivery. So at the state level, there's another layer of coordination. And this is hopefully a more strategic level that the state takes to plan out, you know, more holistically how it wants to implement the variety of workforce programs that may be available in a state through a single plan. So really the goal that WIOA sets out in the state planning requirements is to improve the alignment of all these various job training education resources, align all the service delivery, improve efficiency, hopefully, in service delivery. So, you know, job seekers don't have to be bounced around. I call them job seekers. You may call your customer something else, but it's the, you know, the individual seeking services the goal here is to like have a one-stop place where they can come in and get assistance and not have to be passed around from program to program. And then, of course, we want to make sure that individuals who are seeking jobs are matched with the highest quality job opportunities, and that employers are getting well-trained, skilled individuals to fill their jobs. Next slide, please. So the WIOA state planning requirements are a little bit complicated because there's two different options available that a state can take on. At minimum, a state has to submit a plan to the U.S. Department of Labor and Department of Education that includes those 4 core programs, or technically there are 6, but the 4 titles of WIOA have to coordinate together on a plan and submit it. But as I mentioned, there is an option that a state can decide to include a number of other programs in its strategic plan. And one of those, of course, is CSBG. So that's why I'm here today, to talk about, how to include your program, CSBG, in a WIOA state plan. Next slide, please. So some of the features of the state planning is, as I mentioned, the joint planning. We're trying to get away from each program having its own individual plan and approach things from a more common perspective. So some of the common requirements or shared requirements in a WIO state plan would be things like looking at your the economic environment in which your state is operating, what jobs are growing and occupations are growing, what are declining, what sort of skills are employers demanding so that they can compete globally, as well as what sort of skills do the residents of the state have or where do they need to be prepared to enter these more high quality jobs. And then together, the programs are supposed to coordinate on strategies that they can put in place to basically benefit all the common customers and reach goals that the state sets out for their entire public workforce system. And then another feature of this combined state plan is that there are portions that do get to some specific unique things that have to be addressed for the individual programs that aren't necessarily shared requirements, and these tend to be more operational type items. Next slide, please. So we're actually in state plan season right now. The plans are due next week. So, I would say if your state's not included CSBG, which most of them, let's say, have not, it's a good time to be thinking about 2 years from now when the next submission is due, is how CSBG can maybe be brought to the table in strategic planning and become a partner in talking about how to, better develop the services and coordination so that you can be prepared in the next submission cycle. States do use an online portal to submit their plans. And on the federal end of things, whenever we see a combined plan, we pull in, by we, I mean the Department of Labor and Education. We include all the combined partners that a state's included in its plan, and we'll jointly review the plans together and come to a consensus together about the approvability of the plan, and hopefully finding some really good unique practices, some best practices that we can share more widely throughout our respective grantees. And then we together issue a decision on the plan's approvability at the end of the day. So those are the primary points I wanted to talk about today. I think there are really good opportunities for our programs to collaborate. It can be hard, it can be messy, but at the end of the day, we think it's really a great benefit for programs that are serving sometimes the exact same people to work together to provide the best possible package of services so that person can succeed. And thank you. I forgot about this next slide here. These are the very specific questions beyond the common elements that I mentioned, which I didn't go into great detail on what those are, but there's also other elements very specific to CSBG that are listed here on the slide that states would be expected to address as well if they are included, if CSBG is included in a WIOA state plan. So thank you again for letting me speak to you. And I think I'm now handing this off to Karen so she can give Washington State's perspective on this collaborative relationship.
Thanks, Heather. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending upon where you're at. My name is Karen Dunn, and I'm the Community Services Block Grant Program Manager, which has state and federal funds here in our state. That's Washington, as well as asset building. And I also deal with our tax credit outreach campaign for our state. And I work for the Department of Commerce. This slide just basically shows some of the diverse work that we do throughout the state of Washington. We have more than 100 programs and also work with several state boards and commissions. And our key customers include businesses, local governments, tribes, and community-based organizations. In community services, which is where I work, we have low-income heat and energy assistance, that's okay, Work First, CSBG, and then again, the tax credit outreach, among many others. Thank you. Next slide. So I always like to start off by saying, I'm representing the state of Washington and I'm going to be discussing them. And I like to say, as with every community action agency, once you've seen one community action agency, well, you've seen one. And as far as the state offices goes, well, once you've seen one CSBG state office, well, you've seen one. I fully recognize we are all vastly different and important in our role and how we execute our roles. So I'm just representing how we do things here in Washington, which is not the end all be all. I'm just saying it works for us. And of course, we're always open for improvement. But a snapshot of what CSBG in Washington state looks like. We administer both the state and federal funds to local entities, community action agencies. And we provide services to low-income households that are below 200%. We are one of only 17 states in the US that has both a state and federal funded CSBG, approximately $8 million in a regular non-COVID year, of course. We get $8 million in federal funds and about $1 million per year in state funds. The state of Washington has 30 agencies statewide, and we have tribes in Washington state, 5 of them that receive direct CSBG funding from the federal government. Next slide, please. So how do we work together in our state? Well, we contract funds with community action agencies and they are able to determine how funding would best be used in their local areas. Who better to know about those they serve than those that live in and amongst that, correct? That's kind of the thinking that we have. And so we empower those agencies to and reinforce that method with our agencies. And we allow the service providers to determine the need for their community and what's going on right then and there. Things change and things are vastly different, even across the state from one county into another, in not only in distance and in mileage, but things can be vastly different in just in everything within the community. CSBG can be used, of course, to provide service to individuals, or it can be used to support the administration of allowable services and activities, which are funded through a different source, which is a super, super helpful allowable process for CSBG and allows community action agencies to have flexibility. Often there's not a lot of areas for a lot of funding that comes in to help support administrative or otherwise some programs. So this is a great opportunity. And then if agencies elect to use their funding to provide workforce development and training, they have to align with our state's WIOA strategies and coordinate with a local one-stop shop center. Next slide, please. So this is to connect the dots, actually. It's not, it's really colorful. I'm from Washington State. These are University of Washington colors. What can I say? Anyway, these are the 30 agencies across the state. Every single county in the state of Washington is represented and has a location from a community action agency across the state. And I'm showing you all of them across the state. They're in different colors because we have two community service block grant managers, and the colors designate who is assigned to which one. But you can see the vastness across the state there. And then I'm showing you this to also include how WIOA is distributed as well. So next slide. So the map on the right is basically the workforce development councils across the state and how they're broken into different areas or consortiums across the state. We partner with the State Board of Community Technical Colleges as well. Department of Commerce is our agency, our Employment Security Department, Workforce Development Councils, local leaders, which includes economic development councils, chambers of commerce, and port districts, and the Washington Workforce Association. So just trying to show there how we're spread apart, or not apart, we're spread around. We're not apart, we're all together, right? Next slide, please. And then, so the community action agencies in Washington, what I've identified here is about 1/3 of the agencies in Washington State are part of the regional development councils. And so the red stars are indicating where community action agencies are located in Washington State that have partnerships with the regional development councils. That's why they're identified that way. There won't be a quiz on this in the morning, so you're all good. You don't have to remember any of these details if you don't, if you don't want to. Next slide. So our state workforce plan, contrary to what it's talent and prosperity for all. Contrary to what a TAP may mean to many state offices that work with CSBG, which often is referred to as a technical assistance plan, that is not the case here. It means talent and prosperity for all, but I'm open to changing that any way around that we can to make it work better. So we work to provide ways to strengthen business engagement, to broaden system accessibility, streamline customer focus, and build a next generation performance accountability system to measure our impact. So those are the 4 major methods used, hopefully providing new ways to do these things. That's our TAP, right? Talent and prosperity for all. Next slide. So what is the future of work? Well, we are still recovering from a world-changing pandemic. There is no normal, new normal, or other normal. It's just the way it is, I think, at the moment. So, and we know that automation is advancing super quickly, and the remote work environment has become, in many cases, a new normal. It has very much so in our state office, where I would say probably 90% of our 380 workforce all work remotely now, and will continue to do so even after the impacts of the pandemic are gone. We have adopted this work environment. So many frontline workers that were a part of the community service block grant or community action agencies, and others as well, not excluding others, they risked their health and livelihood to keep their jobs, and they had to face choices on what to do as the economy begins to recover. Many jobs just simply disappeared due to the economic shutdowns, and starting something new isn't always a choice, but a necessity. So we recognize the importance of partnering with other organizations. It's all about collaboration and working together. Not any one of us is strong enough to hold it all up. So we do have to collaborate and work together to make it a greater world around us and make things more successful. And so leverage existing programs and available jobs to mitigate worker displacement. That's super important. Also recognizing the importance of data to identify trends and provide individuals with information on career paths and invest in what works. Data, again, is super important part of this partnering too. And we want to strive to be a driving force in the cohesive union of state and local government agencies councils, nonprofit organizations, and all the efforts to build a stronger and more informed workforce-centered network. Sorry. Next slide. So as many of you that know me know, I love to boast about the state of Washington. It's not the best, but it is the best in my book. So I downloaded, or we have a short video here that we wanted to share with you about a great example of workforce investment in Washington State. It has to do with students in Washington that are exploring different types of careers and connecting with learning such as job fairs, after school programs, and hands-on events. So we're going to show this clip.
When students connect with today's employers, they gain a vision for what can be. When they discover how their passions and talents apply to real-world jobs, they find new motivation. When they experience how what they're learning in school applies to today's careers, their education comes alive. We call this career-connected learning, and it's changing the way we do school.
My name is Brian Azzano, and I work for a company here in Mount Vernon. It's called Stealth Acoustics, and we make high-end speakers. I'm here today to spend some time with some 8th graders and kind of get them pumped up about some of the career opportunities that are out there for them right here in Skagit Valley. We think it's a good idea to come in here and educate the youth because it does strengthen both the community and our potential future workforce.
He talked about the invisible stereo speaker, which is actually a pretty cool thing. I'm fascinated by the technology and engineering they do to make them, which it kind of reminds me of what I want to do when I grow up, engineering and technology.
Not every student has the same opportunities. Some of them struggle and don't have the connections and don't have the mentorship, and that's what the business community provides. Our program is designed to really develop a partnership between education and the business community.
I absolutely wish somebody would have come and shown me a program like this where it exposed me to a variety of occupations. I was in a situation where I ended up getting all the way to college and I really hadn't a clue as to what I wanted to do.
We bring in 8th grade girls from all around the community and we give them an opportunity to see the different construction trades that we have out here, to see that they can do it too.
I want to be a chemist when I grow up. I want to be a police officer.
I want to be one of those movie makers.
When I grow up, I want to be a photographer, a vet, and an artist. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up.
Well, we get invited every year to a 5th grade career fair, and the kids get to come in and check out all the different careers that are available for them. Coming here is a great way to give back to the community. It really promotes all the jobs here in Wenatchee Valley, and it makes the kids look forward to doing something when they get older.
And then look what we see. Oh my gosh.
If I would have had more exposure to programs like this growing up, I would have had a little more direction.
And to give them a vision is something that is very important to the success of the students. To help develop that career path in options that they might not know exist is priceless.
Thanks for showing that. I have to laugh the young man that said, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Well, I think in 8th grade, my only focus was I wanted to be a detective on Charlie's Angels. And for the younger folks on this webinar, they won't know at all what that is. So that's something to look up. But for those of us that were around during the 70s and 80s, we all know what Charlie's Angels was. I did not have a career path in mind. So it's awesome that we have these opportunities and give them to and allow them for our children and youth, which are going to make up the tomorrow of our world. So the next slide, this is another example of how we partner or how partners have found success in talking to workforce individuals and providers. There was a series of rural listening tours that were provided at one point. And the one I'm focusing on here is in Aberdeen, Washington. You see it's that red blocked area all the way over on the left part of the state. And it has a population of about 74,000. the major industry in Grays Harbor County has typically and historically been the logging industry. However, in the 1990s, late 1980s, this was hit with a significant decline in jobs, and then there was huge unemployment. So this is one of the hardest hit areas that has poverty in the state of Washington. So, but area employers and their employers, as well as education and training providers, elected officials, others, we were invited to attend second of four rural community vitality forums, say that really fast 5 times, that were held throughout the state of Washington in rural areas. And they were focused trainings on those regional sites and what was important in those local areas. So that's why we call them listening tours, but we learned from those that lived in the areas that were facing challenges and issues, and then also informed businesses and such on helping to find qualified new hires to reinforce the workforce in that local area. Next slide, please. So that's about all I really have. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the state CSBG offices. Again, this is what works for us, and we really enjoy our partnerships. I guess what the most important thing I can really emphasize on is the partnerships with all the organizations throughout the state, and making sure that those are reinforced and support of one another. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you again to all of our presenters today, to Karen, Heather, and Charisse. I am so grateful for your partnership, and we hope that all of the participants here feel empowered with more knowledge on how CSBG can meaningfully partner with workforce providers through WIOA. If you have any questions regarding CSBG and WIOA, you can contact me at jessica.kane@acf.hhs.gov. And please remember to copy CSBG states and your assigned program specialist. Now I'm going to close the presentation, and we can see if any questions have been posted in the Q&A box for our presenters. Okay. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to ask them now. I do have a couple of questions myself that I would love to ask. So specifically, I wanted to ask Karen, as the CSBG program manager for the state of Washington, what has your participation in, what happened? Sorry. What has your participation in the WIOA state plan or in the American Job Centers look like?
So
with the board, sorry.
That's okay. So, that's a kind of a rolling answer. I'll say that because it changes quite a bit all the time due to things happening. For instance, the pandemic, even natural disasters will have an impact on workforce and working together and how we work together. There's a lot of variety of things that has a direct effect on how these things operate. So I think I believe that actually being flexible and supporting those that work in the communities to that know their services best and know their communities best, being supportive of that, not taking on the idea that, well, we're the state office, so we're going to tell you how to administer something. That's not the role we like to take. We appreciate the value of those in the work that are doing the work and of the work that know the work. So just be supportive of that. And again, recognizing partnerships, we do identify those in our state plan, but when one partnership door opens, often many others will be right there as well. You just have to make sure you look out, on both sides of that doorway, because often there's more around. So I think probably those answers, hopefully that kind of answered your question, but it's a rolling question. It's one that doesn't have continuity at any specific day or time or part of the year.
One attendee has asked, what is the best way to get the state WIOA agency to include the CSBG state agency in development of the strategic plan or WIOA state plan? And I was wondering, Heather, have you seen any ways that partner programs have encouraged?
I think, it's going to vary by state and what your own state dynamics and politics are. But I would encourage, the administrators of the CSBG program in any state to try to connect with the state workforce development board for the state. Most of them have a website that lists who the members are, who's the executive director. If you're not familiar with it, those meetings are all public meetings. I think one thing you could do is attend a meeting and find out more about it, or, try to meet the relevant people in your state that way. And also just reach out to the different agencies within your own state, those that administer the workforce programs. That would be another way, because they're all required, like the Title I programs, the WIOA Title I programs, rather, Wagner, Pizer, Adult Ed, they're all required to sit on the workforce board. And it's actually the workforce board that's responsible for the overall coordination and development of the state plan. So that's why I keep mentioning the board. But I would say those are the best ways to start anyway, to make the connections and make your voice heard.
And going off that question, Heather, somebody shared that it would be good if it was a real requirement for WIOA to include CSBG in the strategic planning process. When it's an option, it's harder for it to happen. Any way to have legislation altered to change it to a must instead of optional? That's a difficult question.
So that would be a decision made by Congress.
Mm-hmm. So some reaching out.
Sorry, my delay is there.
Okay. And then Denise Harlow asked, Karen, do you work with community action state associations as part of the CSBG WIOA collaboration?
Yes, thanks, Denise, for the question. And yes, we do. I was going to add, if you don't mind, on to that last question as well, is just because something isn't optional, or excuse me, is not required, or it's considered optional, doesn't mean we can't, right? So just because in a state office or in a state they don't have an existing, state cooperative relationship with WIOA, doesn't mean you can't seek that out. We're all busy. I get that. We're super busy. We're all overwhelmed with work, but we're all overwhelmed with work. So everybody is kind of in the same boat, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. So don't be hesitant in some cases to make that reach out and connection. Really super important.
Great. And how do you, can you describe how you work with the Community Action State Association as part of the collaboration? Based on that second question, if there was any more information on that.
I'm assuming you mean the Washington State Community Action Partnership, which is our state arm of a state representative arm that represents the community action agencies across the state. And I am from a state that is very fortunate to have a wonderful partnership and relationship with our community action network here in Washington, as well as the association. I can't say that that's all existing everywhere, but that doesn't mean, again, that you can't get there. So it is, we work with the Washington State Community Action Partnership collectively, and even in responses or work efforts or methods of implementing new programs or services or designs. We work together so that it's more or less a triangle. We look at it as a triangle. It's the state, it's the association, and then it's also the community action agencies. So it's a triangle effort. And then that reaches out even beyond our state. So that's a regional and national collaboration too, and also including tribes. Hopefully that answered that question.
And Jessica, I would like to also add that something that Karen said that resonated with me. It's an opportunity. And opportunities is what, to me, the Community Action Network is all about, or the CSBG Network. How do we take advantage of opportunities to improve conditions for the individuals, families, and communities that we serve? And only through opportunity do we that's where innovation kind of creeps in. That's where new partnerships are forged and developed. And we also, the thing that's most important to me, and I'm going to give it as a nugget, today's webinar was trying to figure out why it's important. It's an important opportunity, especially in the wake of the pandemic, and especially as we look at how to move people beyond their conditions and move them to self-sufficiency, as we stated in the beginning of this discussion around the CSBG goals. So CSBG Network, everyone on the call, this is a great opportunity. And our goal in the federal office is to make sure we keep these things before you, or these opportunities before you, with the experts like Heather in DOL, with Karen, who's actually doing this every day in the field, or coordinating or facilitating or fostering these relationships. Only when we work together can we get to those outcomes. And we also know that our families are counting on us in vulnerable communities to do just that, because jobs and employment and livable wages is paramount to their success, feeling good about who they are, and making sure that they can meet the needs not only of themselves, but for their families, and also create a stronger community. So in my mind, it's an opportunity, it's valuable, and we have so many resources, even through our training technical assistance partners, to help us think through this. As you've known, Denise has asked a question, Janae has put comments in the box. We have Heather here in regards to a partner in DOL. So we have a lot of resources that can support us in carrying this work through. But I do want to say, I'm gonna stop. So because Jessica, I see we're getting more questions, and I want to make sure that we're responsive to the people on the line today.
Yes, thank you. Those are all great responses and a great call for people to engage and reach out to be engaged in the system. From the chat pod, can a CSBG agency receive WIOA dollars from AJCs, and can AJCs receive CSBG dollars from CSBG agencies? As in, are there instances where CSBG agencies become subrecipients of AJCs?
I've not heard of that happening. So the relationship normally is that we're not mixing funding streams here. It's that each program retains its own administrative entity. So like for the WIOA Title I dollars, those get sent to the state by formula, and then those funds get then allotted throughout the local system to local boards to administer those funds through the American Job Center. And it's like the funding has to be tracked that way. So I guess it's possible if I don't know enough about how the CSBG agencies operate, but I guess if they're potentially a nonprofit, they could compete as a subrecipient if there are procurements that the local board puts out. I know I'm getting like maybe too in the weeds here, but that'd be the only potential way I could see that happening. Otherwise, what really happens is that, in terms of service delivery locally, it really should be a cooperative relationship where each program understands its role and how it contributes to a given individual's needs. And then those funding streams are not mixed, but braided to like support that individual's career plan or path. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the next question is, do all of the optional partners need to be involved for a state to submit a combined plan? For example, what if one optional partner isn't interested? Can the other optional partners and required partners submit a combined plan?
Yeah, no, it can be any, it doesn't have to be every single optional partner. So a state can decide to include just TANF or TANF and CSBG, and not the others. So it's actually very hard for a state to plan with all the optional programs. So that's a lot of coordination. Not that it's not a great goal to have, but yeah, it's absolutely possible just to do one or two combined plan partner programs.
Awesome, thank you. And the last question that I'm seeing is, so WIOA funding, I think this is in reference to the video that we watched, Karen. So WIOA funding can be used to help youth select a career versus job training, or was that from CSBG? So I think they're asking, where's the connection between WIOA and CSBG with the youth career program?
So many of our community action agencies are in fact WIOA providers as well. But in that specific instance, this was done through the workforce, I'll say the training coordination board. I'm not positive on that one, but what CSBG does often supplement these providers and programs across the state, in that we can use the flexibility of funding for the purpose of supporting those specifically targeted programs. In that case, CSBG didn't fund that specific provision. I'll say, I'm not quite sure how to call that, or that specific event, let me call it that specific event, but there was a partnership involved in that. We were aware of it, we knew about it, we knew what the agencies were doing, and so we also utilize this and how the outreach, utilize situations like this and how our outreach can really be impactful, whether it be for youth or seniors or any age group. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah.
I also wanted to add one thing if I could. So I'm very fortunate to also sit on the National Association of Community Service Providers, the NASCAS board, and that's been an honor of mine for several years. And then I saw Denise mentioned or identified CAPLA as an excellent resource, and she's 100% correct. I even from the state perspective, which I don't know is very common, but I often reach out to CAPLA in a collaborative effort, or look to that organization for information on how they're advising or providing guidance or resources. Because there again, it's another great way to partner. There's no border there. We're just partnering across lines for the best and for everyone's success. So NASCASP as well as CAPLA, the National Community Action Partnership, all again on that national level, it's all a great resource for all to use. It doesn't have to be at the state office level. That can go right down to your community action agencies or your workforce development councils.
Great, thank you. So that's all the questions that we had, and I'm going to close out and pass it back to Charisse to give some final remarks before we end the webinar.
Thank you. I just want to again thank everyone on the call today. I want to thank our National Technical Assistance Partners for being on the call and adding comments in to kind of encourage and motivate us to use them as resources to move this work forward. Heather, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion with us. I'm not going to say we're not going to. I'm not going to say we're going to just take this and not move on. We may reach out to you again as we learn more and more questions surface. We may try to convene another session or provide some additional guidance to our network, because this is an important part of building back our country and making sure people have the resources they need. So I just want to say thank you to you, Heather. And Jessica, thank you for your enthusiasm in making sure this conversation happened. So because we see it as a valuable resource to strengthen our network. And last but not least, Karen, thank you for bringing that real life example, real-time example to this conversation, because we know peer-to-peer learning is a strength that we have within our network, and we always want to build on our assets. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for your commitment to this work. And as you go back to your daily activities today, think about why this is important to you carrying out the work of CSBG, and look for opportunities at all levels in order to engage with this work around workforce development. So thank you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.